You'll notice tonight I'm not really near a official headstone, because what I'm going to talk to tonight to you about is something a little bit more vast, a little bit more heavy. We're going to talk about unknown burials here. So I'm going to give you a backdrop of the National Cemetery and some information about it, but I'm also going to pose a question to you about this cemetery. What do we do with unknown soldiers? How do we preserve the memories of people whose names we do not know? So I'm going to give you some information to think about for a minute. The National Cemetery here in Fredericksburg was established early after the Civil War, or just post-Civil War. It's kind of finished up around 1868 with most of the burials, but it's active until 1945. The current iteration that you're seeing today of the National Cemetery has over 15,300 Union soldiers buried here, including some U.S. soldiers that are come after the Civil War. You'll only see about 6,000 to 7,000 headstones, however, and we only know out of those people about 2,600 names. So that gives this cemetery somewhere between 80 to 85% of an unknown burial rate. So most of the people in here, we don't know the names of. Their names, their stories, their exact end, their exact time and place. We don't know everything about them. And chances are we may never know a lot about these men. You'll see as you go through the cemetery that the smaller headstones have two numbers on them. There's a plot number, and there's a much smaller number usually that has about somewhere between 1 and 12 of the possible number of humans that are buried in that burial plot. So what do we do with this information? And how do we lose track of so many men whose names we'll probably never know? Well, in the Civil War, it's a very complicated business, burying. When you're marching, when you're fighting all the time, when you're out on campaign, when you're trying to win the Civil War, unfortunately, proper burial is not at the top of the priority list. So in that case, we have a variety of things that can happen. We have mass graves that are dug, where people are buried together in numerous cases. We have shallow graves, which kind of disappear over time or aren't taken care of or watched over. In many cases, you might have a wooden marker put up for you, and you might have your name written down somewhere. You might have your death recorded. But even in that case, dying in the Civil War is not guaranteed for you to have a proper burial. Even in cases with wooden markers for your burial, it may be lost to time. It may be used for firewood, unfortunately, in some cases. And so we lose track of a lot of these stories just because in the Civil War, things kind of get overlooked, things get left behind. So how do we deal with this? How do we preserve the memory of people we'll never really know exactly specifically about? Well, in my opinion, and the way I'm going to do it, is I'm going to share the story of a man whose name we do know, but a man whose story kind of stops at his death on May 13th, 1864. We don't know exactly where he's buried. It could be here. It's very possible. We also know that he has a memorial dedicated to him back in Michigan, his home state, also my home state. His name is John Prosser. John Prosser, at the beginning of the Civil War, with his time in the Civil War, is about 19 years old. He comes from Brighton, Michigan. He is a farmer for his family. He is a very dedicated family person, judging by his letters and descriptions about him that I've seen. He is always checking in on them, even though he's doing a soldier's duty, like many other young boys at the time of the Civil War. John Prosser has dark brown hair. He's 19. He's a young boy. He's 5'6". He's got me beat by 1 inch. John Prosser is just like thousands of other people. But I want to tell you specifically a little bit about him. He joins a unit called the 20th Michigan. The 20th Michigan Infantry is going to make their way down south from Michigan to fight here in the Civil War. They're going to be part of a group of the Army that finds themselves getting all over the place. They get transferred to different fronts of the war. They find themselves being a part of a bunch of different actions. But no matter where they are throughout the war, they're going to find themselves back in Virginia in the spring of 1864. And in the spring of 1864, there's a new guy in town in command of the Union armies. His name is Ulysses S. Grant. Who's heard of that guy, right? So Ulysses S. Grant is going to embark on a new campaign that we know now today as the Overland Campaign. It starts off with the Battle of the Wilderness, but quickly following the Battle at Wilderness, we have the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse. Now, Spotsylvania Courthouse is where we're going to pick up the story with the 20th Michigan. John Prosser and the 20th Michigan are going to find themselves in the thick of the fight on May 12, 1864. They're going to be helping lead an attack onto the Confederate position just outside the town of Spotsylvania. It's not a very good fight. They fight very well, judging by the records and what is written about them, but unfortunately it's a heavy and nasty fight. They don't make it very far in the field, and they find themselves kind of caught in some positions where they're taking fire from a lot of different places. They suffer 50% casualties just in their unit alone, the 20th Michigan. One of those men, mortally wounded on May 12th, is a man by the name of John Prosser. John Prosser will make his way to a field hospital where it is recorded that he died on May 13th, 1864. That's kind of where his story stops. That's where it ceases. We don't know his exact whereabouts, even though it could be here. But to keep preserving his memory, to keep telling you a little bit more about him, what I want to do is capture his personality in a letter that he wrote to his younger brother back home in Michigan. It's not a lot of important stuff that he's talking about, no important information that he's revealing, but it captures how dedicated I think he is to his family. So he writes to his younger brother, "Enclosed your letter was very gladly received. I am very much pleased to hear from you and to learn that you are improving in writing so fast. You must write a little every day. Get Louisa or Eliza to show you how to hold your pen. Take as much pains as possible to informing the letters, and be sure and spell every word correct, and there is no doubt that you will become able to transact any kind of business by the time you are 15 years old. I am much delighted to hear about your oxen. I suppose you take great pleasure in working them. Well, I must close. Write again soon. Write anything you can think of. John H. Prosser, March 1864, just about 2 months before the Battle of Spotsylvania." He dies at Spotsylvania, but we are helping together to preserve his memory. And I want to add one more chapter to this modern day. He has descendants still alive today. He's got a family back from Michigan who paid us a visit recently. And what they wanted to do is add one final chapter to kind of give some closure to the memory of John Prosser. In the National Cemetery, there's a spot where there's some known burials of 20th Michigan men, people he probably knew and fought alongside with. Nearby are some unknown burial spots. And what his family did is they brought a picture and they dedicated to his memory one of those headstones. It's very likely that the picture is actually still there. Sorry for the brightness of the light here. But you could probably go see this in the dark somewhere, a little bit that way behind most of you. But what I want to thank you for doing tonight is learning about John Prosser. And I just want to remind you that there are thousands of stories just like John Prosser's. Names of people who we need to keep preserving, memories that we need to keep talking about.